What's poppin', voice of reason?
So tonight's show is approach with reason, meaning let's all be reasonable people here. Now, Salty and Grumpy, I love you guys, and you're going to stay up here tonight too. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, snap, reason in politics. I don't know if we can do it.
Well,
Just kidding.
let's try to give the floor a little bit to Voice Guys. I want you guys to be his introduction. I want him to kind of give you an idea of his background, where he comes from, and why he's voting the way he is. And I think you guys can learn a lot from this guy. So if he wants to monologue tonight, he's kind of my co-host tonight. So please, the floor is yours, Voice. Explain your who you are and why you're voting and what.
Thanks very much. Very much appreciate it. I actually first took what I considered to be a pursuit of truth exercise online in 1995 when the internet was brand new. And so that occurred to me as an opportunity for an interface between people with highly different points of view. Now, I had my first kind of awareness of political structures happen when I read some books that were by authors like Craig Roberts in the mid-90s, where I started to realize that there was a little bit more to power than what we learned in our high school civics class, and that there was much more than what meets the eye to the average citizen. So, however, I came in with what would be deemed a viewpoint that there were two parties that I would at that time call dumb and dumber. And I ascribed the dumb to the Republican side and dumber to the other side. And that was coming out of, a different space when I was in high school, when I literally thought I was a Democrat, which was quickly recovered once I started facing some basic realities and, experiencing some, talk radio, which at that time was sort of the original internet, where you had a democracy of ideas. So, but originally I did think of myself as most likely on the correct track, as most people will tend to think that they're right about their positions. But I also honestly wanted to learn, ideally, that I was wrong, because I saw that we were on a trajectory of going ever leftwards. And so if the leftist view of utopia was meritorious, that it had something to it, then I would have slept much better for the last several thousand nights, having known that we were basically on the correct track. So when I was running that, my first website, which was called deepwaterweb.com, I would absolutely encourage people to point out anything that they observed of my position that could be wrong. And I was also broad about it because I know people like to have some fun when they argue. So I would say that criticism, both constructive and otherwise, is most welcome. So, and another thing that was sort of a kind of a hobby of mine back then was I was learning some language. And I was learning specifically Japanese.
本当、日本語が話しますか？
ちょっと日本語を話します。Yeah.
すごい日本語上手です。
ありがとうございました。私は大昔テープと本で勉強しました。
Why do I feel like the two of them are cussing me out right now?
すごい、やばい、すごい。All right, we'll talk later about that. Continue.
Excellent. Yes, there is one important travel phrase. I went to Japan 6 times, and the most important travel phrase for everyone to take with them is very simple. It's zenzen wakarimasen, which means I understand nothing. So, but anyway, one of the things that I found watching one of these Japanese dramas is which was a good way for language learning, to kind of get cultural insight and also learn the language itself. And one of these dramas had this kind of wise old sage that was kind of the village leader, basically. And I noticed that he wouldn't be too hesitant to smack people around, to kind of open with insults and then kind of get more into substance as he moved forward. And with that possibly as an influence, I kind of took that approach to my interfacing with the left over the many decades to follow. And so I will start off kind of to like shock people with a little bit of a strong, sarcastic tone. And then as soon as I discovered that they're willing to engage, then I'll kind of quickly turn kind of nice and civil. And so to kind of nutshell that approach, which I think has actually sort of been, had some success. But to put it in a nutshell, it's basically the idea that resorting to insults doesn't necessarily concede loss. It just means that insults are something that can be part of the fun in an exchange. And as long as you don't stay at what I call the bottom triangle, where you're basically at, ad hominem and name calling and what have you, and you occasionally ascend up to the top of the triangle where you get to reason, counter arguments and ultimately reasoned refutations, then you have kind of a more dynamic exchange. You can grab more attention. You can make things a little bit fun. And I think people are all better off when they can kind of smack each other around a little bit just to sort of get as an initial handshake of sorts. So, but anyway, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to participate in exchange. And I have been kind of working on building some Facebook pages and other things to sort of support my position. And before that, I set up a debate group that was on Facebook when Facebook was fairly new in like 2007. I set up a secret private group called Debate Everything. And in that group, I had 150 people or so that were kind of like curated, but it was mostly just people introducing each other into the group. And I found it to be excellent because I was able to test out ideas before I put them to more of a main page. So that if there's an idea that strikes me as being on the right track with something, I could kind of kick it around in this kind of test group and find out how people with different ideas respond to it with varied beliefs. And then from that, I could ultimately have a more solid argument to take with me to a broader audience. And on that group, I had one woman that I work with that was a sociology major. And she was, let's just say, left-leaning. And she was, when I was talking about the concern of migration and handing out benefits to people that kind of trespass without going through a formal process, she would kind of have well, I like Mexicans. It's like, well, it's not a matter of liking people. They have beautiful culture. They're very nice people from all over the world. But the funny thing is she would participate and kind of knock things back. But about 2 months later, she put a post in the group specifically thanking me and for a revelation. And she said, gee, I had no idea all this time that I was a libertarian. So that was one of the cases that sort of encouraged me because I found someone that was basically, kind of left-leaning, into the Sanders kind of category, and came around to a significant change of thought. And so, whereas that's maybe a rare occasion, and a lot of times you're just planting seeds of doubt online with people that maybe can't finish their arguments, or they can't really complete their thoughts or why they believe something, that really gave me a great amount of encouragement to the effect that when I saw somebody that actually came around from kind of a prolonged exposure over the period of months, but it was still making a difference. So I hope I didn't overtalk.
No, that was great, and I want to say I appreciate you having here, and to those listening, I appreciate you guys being here. Please give a couple gifts to our guest Joel. He's on the left, but he's very open to listening, at least. I'm not sure if we've quite changed his mind at this point, but we appreciate him.
Yeah, that's really cool when people with different ideas can come in and engage. And that's one thing that I always respect, is that when people are willing to engage.
I have a quick question.
Can I just check in with Approach really quick? Are you looking to are you trying to keep the panel small, or?
Well, not necessarily, but as long as our guests that are up on the box respect, it is the Approach with Reason night, and if you do feel like interjecting, just say, just ask and interject, and
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of.
I don't want to abuse my mod powers, but one of my really good researchers when it comes to like my group of people has a request, and I know you've interacted with HVAC before.
I saw his request. I was actually going to accept him up, and I was going to, type task him to let voice say his piece.
Gotcha.
And feel free to invite him up. I really don't mind many people coming up as long as they are respectful, and I'll lay down the laws to people I don't know. And most people understand. So what's up, HVAC?
Not much. Just saw you guys live and was seeing what y'all guys were talking about.
Well, you know what? We were letting voice kind of give his background, and Joel had a question. So please, Joel, the floor is yours.
Also, I'm outside right now, so just let me know if it's too loud, and I'll be back home in like a few minutes. I just had a quick question, simply out of the. I think I mentioned before. I don't know if you were here, Sound of Reason, but I mentioned that. Oh no, that was on a different panel. Okay, I'll just say, without going into too much of the background, that like a big influence of mine is Destiny's. So if you have any pushback against like any Destiny thoughts, I would super love to hear it, just because that's a big influence, and I realize I have a big weakness with just like not knowing much, not having much pushback against that creator.
Yeah, hold on, wait. Damn it.
It doesn't have to be today. I'm just saying for in the future or whatever.
Of course. Sorry, guys. Okay, there we go. I'm sure Voice doesn't know Destiny. Destiny's kind of a Voice. If you can mute up real quick when you're not speaking. Sure.
He's left. He would claim center left.
I know what he would claim, and then Joel, if you can mute while other people are speaking, because you do have the background noise. So Destiny, he would say he's center left, and maybe he is, but from listening to him, he does have some radical point of views. I think that maybe I think he sees things a little one-sided when it comes to foreign policy and certain things. But at the same time, the only true problem I have with Destiny is that he's not quite a civil debater. He's more of a guy that is waiting to speak versus listening and really thinking about what he's going to say next in regards to what somebody says. It's a tactic that I don't think is very effective to somebody with opposing point of views, and that's the one thing I don't appreciate about what he does. But I'm sure he's a great dude. I'm sure he has some point of views that I haven't even heard yet, because I don't put a lot of energy into really getting his full narrative. But maybe I should, just to be able to give you that. But a lot of his point of views, I think, from what I've seen, have focused on a lot of foreign policy. I know he has his point of views about a lot of other things, but that's mainly what I've seen. So if you want to kind of give some examples of what really hits home with you as far as his ideology, maybe that would help the panel. Joel, if you may.
Sorry, it's just really bad in the gas station. Give me like a second.
That's okay. Do you guys know much about Destiny? I've seen and I've listened to him speak quite a few times, but not nearly as much as he does speak. Because the man speaks a lot.
So this is a new creator. I've never heard of him. I mean, not that he's a new creator. I've never heard of him though.
No, he's not that new.
No, for me, that's a new name.
Oh yeah, Destiny. He's really gaining traction as far as popularity goes.
Yeah, lately, the reason for that lately, I wouldn't suggest watching his recent stuff because his recent stuff is extremely combative, as you said. Like, and I mean, I watch him all the time, so I know the reason, and the reason is because he believes that the right has gone what would you call it? Basically, he believes that the rhetoric on the right side has been terrible to an extent where if he's civil, he's not gaining the influence that he otherwise could with a more combative stance.
So his views.
So I would say go back, just not 24. Just don't do 24.
That's fine.
Of the year.
His views of the right, I believe, are.
Oh, he thinks are way too
combative for opposition to take serious even at this point. From when I listen to him, it's like, okay, you can make your point of view, but you can't directly beat down somebody else's opposition point of view without understanding it and finding reason to it. He's such a control freak these days. It's driving me crazy.
So I will have to look into this person. I'm completely unaware of.
You guys.
I'll just say the reason why I like him is because he does do his own research, like right in front of all of his views. So his ideas should be like thoroughly thought out. Also, yeah, any other creator that does that, I would super appreciate a recommendation.
Yeah, it's when I see him debate people who are quite intelligent, and even if they don't agree or have all the answers, he tends to kind of belittle people, and his point of view when it wants to come across, I tend to even disagree with it more because of that, but that's more of a biased feeling. And then once again, his foreign policy ideas of why we are in some of the situations we are in and his solutions, I just, at this point,
So can I get a clarifying question from Joel? Because so what I heard you say is he was looking for more traction. But I heard you also say like he would rather be more calm with his platform. So that's one thing. I was gonna try to do the calm thing on TikTok, but you're on TikTok, and that's the thing.
Joel, what is an example of his that you agree with? Maybe we can go to foreign policy, like I said. But once again, it's TikTok, so try to tap dance around anything that's too sensitive.
Foreign policy is not one that I know a lot about. The only one that I really know a lot about because it was a recent conflict, the Middle East conflict, is when I really started getting into politics, and so I tend to agree a lot with what he says on that particular instance. Okay, and I know that he debated stuff on Ukraine as well. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as foreign policy goes.
What is your political stance as far as foreign policy when it comes to Ukraine? Let's just stay there.
For Ukraine, from what I understand, is that Putin Putin attacked Ukraine. Ukraine said, no, we're a sovereign state now, we left you, and that without U.S. support of Ukraine, Putin could just roll over Ukraine and take back the territory that they would want.
Okay, I'm going to give this one to Voice. Voice, would you like to give your opinion in response to what he said?
Yes, I have a very opposite view on on Ukraine. Given that I'm a bit new to TikTok and some of the magical parameters that have to be followed to avoid being smacked off the platform.
You're learning.
For that reason, I'd probably just give a brief summary and then refer to receipts that I bring. And the receipts I offer are in a page called wimkin.com/Ukraine facts.
Okay, wait.
I'm going to ask for this in a second just because I'm not at my computer yet.
Yeah.
Just letting you know.
We'll get back to that. You can ask him later to reference it again. But go ahead, Voice.
Yeah, but the bottom line on it is that Ukraine was indeed a sovereign state until the Obama State Department did a coup and did a color revolution that literally overthrew an elected government that was friendly to Russia, by the way. And even after the actor was installed there as a State Department puppet kind of operator to work on basically a regime change politics against Putin in a near neighbor, just like it's equivalent to what Russia was doing with Cuba originally and what they're doing now in retaliation, basically, is a scheme that has nothing to do with democracy. And in fact, as some of you might know, Ukraine canceled their election. So they're the opposite of a democracy. It's an absolute agent of like kind of global interests, shall we say. And they're they betrayed the Minsk Accords, which Putin was prepared to sign. And at the time, Ukraine was on board with it. And that accord was violated long before Putin made a territorial breach, as it's been defined, which is basically by far lesser an offense than what we did in Bosnia with Clinton's and Serbia. We literally went in and trampled a sovereign state with no good reason, just like a talking point as the basis. And here we are today vilifying a leader that basically his biggest crime is to have betrayed global interests. And ever since, they've been working on staging. Well, again, I don't want to get into too many details that will get TikTok excited.
Most of it you can kind of talk about these type of foreign policies a little bit more than you think.
Okay.
Yeah, but just be careful with saying WW trace. You know what I mean? Be careful with obviously pews, and stuff like that.
Okay.
But for the most part, this subject I've noticed we can kind of go off about.
Yep. And I can also say that I know people very well that are from Ukraine. And one of them originally had an anti-Putin view on this whole situation. And within a few minutes of conversation, they seemed to recognize that I might have a superior understanding. The closer friend that's kind of more in the realm of family is half Russian, half Georgian, born in Ukraine and immigrated here from Ukraine. And they have a much different view than the mainstream media is pushing on us. That, very bad Putin went in randomly for no reason. The other thing that they're leaving out is that there's been like an ongoing violence, and I guess I have to be careful about using the M words, but mass M of resident Russians. And Ukraine's population is roughly half Russians. And when you think of it more broadly, they're basically all Russians. And Russia is basically a product the Russian language is basically born of Slovakian language. So my one friend that speaks Russian fluently, when we visited Slovakia, was amazed that you could understand everything spoken, because it basically to her sounded like Old Russian. But nonetheless, I set up an article on this about the WEF lies as it pertains to Ukraine on my website that's called waronpress.com, that also gets into great detail on it. Now, with that being said, I do understand that it's possible that I arrive at conclusions that could be modified with new information. So I always, whenever I offer putting my cards on the table by offering my scrapbook, that's the wimkin.com/Ukraine Facts, or the War on Press, which has 500 articles that I basically wrote over the years, that I very much invite people to point out anything that they find contentious. There is, so far, I've only had one case where someone said, hey, this article says this, and that's unfair because of that. And I actually updated the article accordingly. So I'm always about being capable of learning new things, and all of my positions I consider tentative and movable.
Can I ask you a question to assist us with? So, under Donald Trump, obviously there was a threat of a conflict, but it really is more in the forefront of our mind within the last 3 years. What sparked this
right
newest
now,
craze?
Yes, as far as Trump is concerned, he tends to bring people to the table, and if Trump remained in his position, the Minsk Accord would have been signed successfully, and it was actually a wild erosion of efforts for peace. And by the way, it's not nice to the Ukrainians either. The Ukrainians and the Russians living in Ukraine are being put in a veritable meat grinder to maintain the corruption that's being funded by the nefarious forces within the Obama State Department that still runs the show. I mean, it seems very clear to most that Biden was never in charge of his White House, nor was Harris. So this is really just an extension. It's, by all appearances, what amounts to, for all intents and purposes, a third Obama term that we've been enduring. And during Obama's first 2 terms, he spawned ISIS, he spawned every single possible suffering in the Middle East. He attempted the Arab Spring to topple Egypt. He toppled successfully, with Hillary's help, Libya, and turned it into a living hell because they were betraying certain interests. So the kind of scorched earth policy that's going on now, that has us on the brink of a WW3, has been started by I'll use a more respectful term, Obama's first and second terms, where he went right to work on stirring up everything. And this isn't just accidental, it's not incompetent, it's not just, whoops, these people aren't very good at their job. This is all very well thought out, it's intentional, and the whole purpose of it is to bring out central authority worldwide. It's and to first erode and destroy the U.S. as an obstacle to world government.
Okay.
So yeah, and,
So-
just to say one more thing, and I'll let you, Havoc, I'll let you go. So the military-industrial's job, Joel, is to create America's stronger economic stronghold around the world. And I can go deeper into them creating coups and throwing over democracy to install people that'll bend the knee to the United States. But
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of that anyway. Or
yeah,
I'm familiar
so-
that it happened.
Of course. So it's not good, and it's just American imperialism. And when I bring up Trump and RFK, those guys aren't part of the club. They're more men of peace. But Havoc, please ask your question.
So, voice, the one thing I heard early on is that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline played a huge role in Russia being comfortable moving forward with their, I guess, aggressions towards Ukraine. Do you, is there truth to that? Because I look for that online, because I swear Zelensky said in a press conference that he was concerned once Biden greenlit Nord Stream 2.
Well, yeah, there's basically there are a great many concessions that were made, and that Trump rightly points out as contrasting against our own pipeline that was immediately shut down. So we were set up in a situation of energy independence for the first time in a long time, which is a very important aspect of strength in the world and our position and posture. But that all being said, the other thing is when the pipeline blew up, and then suddenly, everyone went on TV suggesting that that was a self-sabotage by Putin to make people look bad. It was just as ridiculous as somebody's laptop story and all the quote-unquote disinformation from Russia on that. It's just blatant, obvious lies being fed to us. And in that particular crime, which was one of the biggest environmental disasters in the century, when they blew up that pipe, the release of methane and all that was like unprecedented. And that crime was confessed to by our own White House before it was done. He literally went on TV, the alleged head of the Biden-Harris regime, and said, "Oh, well, that's going to be ended." He literally went on TV and said that. And then after it does suddenly magically have a little problem, then they're all over TV saying, "Oh, Putin did it to himself." So the gaslighting is just amazing. And regrettably, because the public is, you have this blessing of the internet where you can get any information you want. You have all these independent journalists and access to every human voice on earth, and yet they still go to the friggin' CNN and the MSNBC and CBS and ABC, which I call all bull crap, constant bullshit, and of course NBC is nothing but crap. So they go to these sources and take them as authority on everything. And anything that they hear outside of that, they just cover their ears and say, "Oh, that's conspiracy theory," or "it's faux news." And, whenever they bring up Fox News, I always tell them that, Fox only lies 60% in defiance of the 93% lie standards upheld by the Press Weekend favorites, where they're literally 93% of their content is lies.
Wait, so you would trust independent journalists over the news networks?
Oh, absolutely. And that includes the more censored they are, the more you should listen to them. So I won't necessarily name, well, I guess I could name brands, but the people that they literally tried to take their websites down and took them off all platforms, including LinkedIn, those are the ones you want to listen to.
Was it Matt Taibbi's one?
Yeah, Taibbi's a great one. I will not. I'm not going to recommend. What's his name? They're making the frogs.
Alex Jones.
Yeah. Now, as much as I love Alex, okay, he has kind of lost it, and if you've seen what that man has seen, you would imagine why. So I know that he's right a lot, but I think Taibbi is a great one to pay attention to. And there's plenty more out there.
Well, there's also Tulsi Gabbard has come out as actually she started showing real integrity and journalistic capabilities when she literally flew to Syria to talk to Assad during all Obama's shenanigans over there. And she came back and went on CNN because she was at the time a Democrat, so they actually welcomed her on. But boy, were they upset with what she had to say and report. So Tulsi has completely come around. But as far as the ridiculousness of the colorful character of Jones, I'll point out that sure, he got theatrical and gets kind of wacky and emotional and what have you. But he also, his background, he actually has background in intelligence, very much like another man that's no longer around at all to talk about it. And I don't know if you guys have heard of Bill Cooper before, but Bill Cooper wrote a book. Yeah, Bill Cooper wrote a book called Behold the Pale Horse. And I read that cover to cover, and I found it extremely interesting. And he also comes from an intelligence background. Now, Bill Cooper and Jones have something in common. They both predicted 9/11 months before it happened and said exactly what was going to happen before it happened. And they even talked about, Osama and how he was going to be blamed for it. Bill Cooper and Alex both came out with that, which shows that their background in intelligence gave them some insight, right? Because they maintained contacts. They know what's going on. But the most important, in terms of Bill Cooper, he happened to magically have a life-ending moment on his own property in an altercation with police just a couple months after 9/11. So the people to pay attention to are the people that are warning and prove to be right, and pay extra attention to the warnings of dead men that basically literally paid their all to try to reveal what's going on to us.
So you guys, I wanted to introduce the new guest. Okay. So Cortez is from California. I believe you worked within the Justice Department. Is that correct?
Hi
Or
guys.
did I have you wrong?
No, I never worked in the Justice
What do you
Department.
do again? I forget exactly what you do.
Yeah, I work in public policy implementation.
That's what it
Uh,
is.
yeah, with the state. But yeah, my background is in basically government programs, so I have a lot of knowledge about that. Um, but just to go on what the previous guest was saying regarding independent news, I think Aaron Mate, last name spelled Mate. He's done a lot of good reporting. He's found on YouTube. I think he's got a channel called The Gray Zone. They're doing a lot of independent reporting. I like to follow his stuff. Also, there's some other independent journalists that will do articles on the website. What's the name of it? Consortium News. They got some independent stuff. Just because it's mainstream doesn't necessarily mean that it's all false. But it's what I would say is echo Denzel Washington. If you guys heard this quote, I don't know if it's attributed to him, but I heard it from him. He says, if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. But if you watch the news, you're misinformed. So
That's a Mark Twain, I think.
Is it?
I really believe that because truth is everywhere. There's bits and truths everywhere. I can't dismiss a source just because of what it is. You need to examine the information and use critical thinking and try to find out if it's true or not. Because generally speaking, everything once you start making judgments, it's unbiased. It's bias. Everyone has a bias. Otherwise, you're just supposedly just naming off facts, but everyone weaves. I do. Everyone else does. They lend certain credence to one opinion over another. They don't just take everything, and that's my approach on things. That's why I listen to people on the left and on the right, and I say listen. I listen and I examine what they say, and that's kind of the way I take in information. And if it's interesting to me or I want to follow up on it, I do my best to not to prove whether it's right or wrong, just to prove to know what are the issues surrounding a particular matter.
Agreed. That's great. Thank you. That's very good information to give. And to our guest, Joel, I hope that you do, take the advice of these people. And to everyone else, I will be putting this up on my Citizens Debate YouTube channel, just so more people can reference the information that is given out today. So, yeah. And then also, I'm not going to be one of those guys that says like the live and share and stuff like that, because I don't care. It usually comes down to my guests that can be, civil and listen and come up with their questions or debate, whatnot. And I appreciate you today, Joel, because you seem to be someone who wants the truth, and so I just hope that you find it,
Yeah. I have a question for Voice of Reason. I know that we branched off the topic a little bit, so I'm sorry if I'm kind of going back in time a little bit. But what are the benefits of independent journalism and deficiencies of independent journalism? And same for the news networks. What are the benefits of a news network and deficiencies of a news network?
Okay, I very much appreciate that question. The internet, when I first started interfacing with people on the internet, I considered that a collective consciousness that democratized the brain of all of humanity, where everybody had access to every thought. And now that does make it everyone knows Wikipedia is like a bathroom wall. Anyone can write anything they want. And it's also been dominated by specific forces that go in and have a team that basically will uncorrect anything that is made correct on there. So when it comes to a broader source like the internet, right? Like all of humanity and each person as a journalist in their own neighborhood, effectively, everyone has experience that's valid to bring to conversations. And so hearing out all voices as much as possible is disruptive to the elite that govern thoughts. So that's one of the things. I think Rockefeller was having a fit about the internet and the can of worms that was open, because they had control, corporate iron-fisted control, and they had their, I don't know if we're supposed to talk about something that was testified in front of Congress in the 70s, but specifically the MK Ultra and the control of media. They enjoyed absolute thought-shaping monopoly. So when it comes to hearing out independent journalists, it's a matter of discernment. So it's not the threat that it's painted to be by the voices that are amplified by the elite. You had Obama going on TV with his routine thing saying, people no longer know what to believe, so we have to have the Constitution is just a really nice software, but it needs to be patched with an update. So you have this kind of nonsense where the most important fundamental freedoms of ours to be able to speak to each other are being challenged because we're responsible to hear voices and do any discernment. And that is the most dangerous rhetoric. If there is speech that should be suppressed, it's the speech that calls for suppression. The other thing that I will remind people, especially on the left, that originally, quote unquote, liberals were all for free speech. But today it's taken on the exact opposite, where they're the most eager to control and have friggin' fits whenever there's kind of free exchange. But they can't pretend, as I'll remind them, to be for democracy, much less fighting for democracy, when they're opposed to the prerequisite democracy of ideas in the public square. So today, the public square are the platforms, whether it's X now or before it was Twitter. That is the public square. And if people aren't able to explain why they're voting a certain way, their vote hardly matters, because they're all going into the polls blind and ignorant. What you want is people to be able to compare ideas, have a contest of ideas with rigorous exchange in the public square. And it's not idiots chanting with signs on street corners. It's people on their notebook or on their smartphone putting their best ideas forward that is equal and responding to the ideas being forwarded by the elites of the world, the oligarchy, and the nonsense that they're trying to push as the only truth that should be considered. And their view of democracy today, by the way, is a prevailing notion of the unelected ruling elite is what they now consider democracy. It has not a thing to do with the broader public or populism.
That's pretty. So we're going to be winding down here the show in just a bit. I wouldn't mind if Salty wanted to continue it or somebody else. But I mean, we can go on for a little bit longer. I wanted to make the show about an hour, and I know Voice only had so much time, and plus this TikTok, it drains your battery, and I researched how to stop it from happening, but I need to. Oh, thanks, Havoc. If you're still in the live, he made a background for me for future shows. Anyhow, Joel, if you have any other questions, obviously, please. Or if anybody else has something to throw out there too, but go ahead, Joel.
I have just one that should be pretty quick here. Do you think that there are good reasons to silence an independent journalist?
Oh, well, that's a question that I think you know the answer to, right?
The answer would be yes, right?
Yes, we don't need to get too into that one, but I think you and the rest of the audience might understand that as well.
But then, then the statement of the people that are censored or whatever, those are the ones to listen to, doesn't hold as much water as is presented.
So that's where we're right now. But go ahead.
I just have a question. I think you're leading towards misinformation would be the good reason to silence an independent journalist. But my biggest question is who decides what's misinformation?
I suppose that would be the analysts.
Yeah, I can comment on that if I may. Misinformation and disinfo is the language of fascism. It was used by every known fascist tyrant in history to describe viewpoints that they deemed inconvenient. And invariably, there's no such thing. There's basically good information and bad information. And the best cure for bad information is to have a response with true free speech in the public square, and a response by somebody that is better informed or more honest to answer the lies, to fact check as individuals, not as huge corporate oligarchies, to basically put their thumb on every scale. So it is extremely dangerous when you have these powerful big tech platforms deciding for themselves what's misinformation and what's not. And there are many cases where they are wrong and easily proven wrong with what they declare misinformation. And as an example, the tech platforms acknowledged that the 50 bureaucrats from the intelligence communities were lying when they signed a letter saying that the quote-unquote laptop story was Russian disinformation. So what's declared disinformation is always declared by the people with their thumb on the scale. And I would argue that there's not really a reason to ever silence or suppress independent voices unless, except for by the basic law. And the law on free speech is that you can say any damn thing you please that reflects your views or doesn't. You're even allowed to lie if you want to, although I can't understand a motivation to do that for an honest person, such as what we are, of course. But the point is that the only speech that's not protected is when it's absolute defamatory libel, or incitement, where you're basically saying, let's go do this, and you're causing, causing some mass violence to happen. Those are the only valid exceptions to free speech. And that's according to the Constitution, and it's the First Amendment for good reason. And the Second Amendment is right behind it for good reason, because with there no Second Amendment, there is no First Amendment. That's just simply the way that our human rights are nested. If you'd have no right to defend yourself, you have no right to defend people that are going to take away your very mouth and sew your mouth shut, basically. And that's the most evil form of fascism there is, when you take somebody's voice away from them.
Well put, sir.
Real quick, could you just repeat the only options of like free speech being going against it? I think you know what I'm referring to here.
Well, let's do this. I like I said, I'm gonna wrap up the show here, just because my phone is unaliving. but like I said, if we want to continue it, Salty, if you're opening to start one up, we can continue the conversation. Voice, I don't know how much time you have to talk tonight. We can always do it another night with you, of course. But I would like you, Voice, if you know the quote by Ronald Reagan, the one that I took from you recently, I would love to end the show with that quote.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Let me see if I can gather it up here.
Sure. Yeah, because I don't want to botch it. I could kind of put it out there, but I think it would kind of solidify everything that we are trying to get across today. And Joel, you've been.
I don't mind going live. I don't necessarily. It's not that I don't like monologuing. Voice. So hold on.
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
I have a very different approach to mine. This, in my eyes, this is more of an educational type of thing.
Good. Yeah, I mean that's my.
It's also. So mine is more or less like entertainment, but I want to try to start giving more people a voice. I want to try to start giving more people an opportunity to hop in my panel. But I'm also attempting to reach more people in San Diego, especially, since my ultimate goal would be to run for a bigger office, not where I'm trying to make a career out of things at all.
Sure.
But I would like to make an effective change, in that regard. So I want to start reaching more people. At the moment, though, it's like there's so much information out there, and people are not willing to talk, right? People want to attack. Or like you try to look something up that you heard of, and right now we have these fact checkers all over the place.
Yes.
In my eyes, the fact checkers is exactly what they did in Germany before WW2 started.
Sure. Yeah, they had a disinformation liaison back then that might even be single-handedly responsible for what happened back then. I forget his name, but Voice, do you remember it?
Gerbils?
Yes, Gerbils. That's right. Quite an interesting character there, and what he did. It's an interesting part of history in regards to that era. But hey, let's go ahead and we're going to wind this down. Voice, if you've got the quote, I'd love for you to say it. Joel, we're following each other. Feel free to come back anytime with more questions, and I'll probably be jumping around in a little bit, just to continue going on for the night. But go ahead, Voice, if you're there. Oh, he's teacupped. And Cortez, I know that you came up tonight, and I wish I could have given you more chance to talk. And you and I will continue our conversations as well.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I think I run across you here and there, but I'll look for your lives.
Great. Sounds good.
Yes,
Voice. If
send me a
you may.
share.
Sounds good.
Yes, I greatly appreciate your patience. I thought I could slide to the other screen but then I realized that I forgot how TikTok works. The quote is as follows: "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed for them." My computer's playing tricks.
That's all right. In our sunset years, if so, then in our sunset years, we will be explaining to our children what America used to be like when men were free.
Exactly. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Well,
All
it's
right,
a
that
great
was,
honor and pleasure to be part of this gathering tonight.
And yeah, thank you to everyone who was listening, to Joel, our guest, and to everyone else. It was a great show. If you want to listen to the whole thing, you can check it out at Citizens Approach. I'm sorry, excuse me, Citizens Debate on YouTube.
Beautiful.
All right. And Voice, I'll talk to you later.
Excellent. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Good night.
Well, good night,
Good
guys.
night.
All right, guys. And Joel, I'll talk to you later too, bud.
Peace.
Good night.